Welcome to a new lesson in JavaScript at devhoot. In this lesson, we are going to study about variables and data types in JavaScript. We'll see how to declare variables in JavaScript. We'll go over the concept of dynamic typing in JavaScript, and then we'll explore all the available data types in JavaScript. If you are completely new to JavaScript and want to get an overview of it, I recommend going through my other lesson in which I explain what JavaScript is and how it works. In that lesson, I gave an overview about the background of JavaScript. The link to that lesson is in the description. If you feel you are ready to move on with this lesson, then hang tight as we are going to explore everything about variables and data types. In most of the programming languages, variables are provided with the primary purpose of storing data. Variables are basically named storage spaces. In these storage spaces, we can store any data that we want, and then using the names, we can reuse this data at any point in the program. And as it stands, that JavaScript can do this too. If it couldn't, then JavaScript would be pretty much useless. So, the point to note here is that variables means space. They provide you space with the name. The manner in which we declare variables in JavaScript is with the use of the var keyword. First we give the var keyword, then a space, and then we give the name that we want the storage space to have. In this case, I have given the name soda. So the storage space has the name soda, and the value that will be stored inside of soda is given after the equal to sign. Here I have given the value strong, which is inside of double quotes. Anything stored inside of double quotes or single quotes in JavaScript indicates that it is a string, and string means that it will be treated as text. So strong is treated as text data which is stored inside of soda variable. Now one thing is that you can name your variables anything you want, but a good practice and common convention is that while naming your variables, you should always give names that are self-descriptive. That is, name should define the purpose of the variable. For example, if I am storing the name of a person, the best name for the variable will be person or name. In this way, any other developer who reads your code can identify what the purpose of the variables are, and also it reduces commenting on your part as a developer. Now note that in JavaScript, the value that we can store inside of variables can be anything. It can be numbers or any other type of data. Now we'll come back to data types at a later stage in this lesson. But for now, one thing you need to remember is that a variable has two parts, a name and a value. The name is the name of the storage space, and the value is the value which is stored inside of that storage space. And the manner in which you declare a storage space is by using the var keyword. Now while making a variable in JavaScript, there are two parts, declaration and initialization. So giving a name to a storage space is known as declaration, and assigning an initial value to a variable is known as initialization. Now these two processes, declaration and initialization, can be done separately or together. For example, here in this code snippet, we have done both of them together. Note that we have declared the name of the storage space with var name, and together with doing the declaration, we have also given an initial value of a string which reads Imran to the name variable. These two processes can be done separately also. For example, here we have declared the var name, and then after the declaration, at a later point, we are giving it a value of Imran by just typing name equals to Imran in quotes. The value we give to these variables are not permanent. That is, we can change these values whenever we want. An example of it is that, see, we have made two variables, var name, given it a value of Imran at a later stage, and the second variable age, in which the declaration and initialization were done at the same time. var age equals 18. Now notice that here we haven't used any quotes. This means that 18 will be stored inside of age as a number. So now age and name are variables which have some values. At a later stage, we need to change these values. So we can just do exactly in the manner in which we assign values. Name equals to soda, give it another name, and age equals to 20, change the age which was a number. So I'm in my browser's console and now I'm going to show you the concepts that we just learned. So first let's declare a name. Now we are going to do separate declaration and initialization for this name variable. Now let's give name a value, name of Imran. And now let's do declaration and initialization together for the age. Now let's change the values that these two variables have. And see, the console acknowledged our change. That is, now the name have value of devhoot. Now let's change the age variable. Age 20 and here. So it works perfectly fine. Bravo! Now you know how to declare variables in JavaScript and also know what declaration and initialization means and also when to do what. I've shown you only one method to declare variables in JavaScript, that is with the help of the var keyword. The var keyword is the oldest method of creating variables in JavaScript. The new standards of JavaScript recently introduced two new keywords, let and const. With the help of these two new keywords, we can declare variables in JavaScript. But let's reserve these two keywords for a later stage, because when we declare variables with these two keywords, then the meaning changes. The entire context in which we use those variables changes. So we'll explore all these details about these two keywords in a separate lesson. But I thought it would be good for you to know about this now, as the primary function of these two keywords is also to declare variables. So now you know about these, let's move on. Having learned to declare variables, now let's learn about data types in JavaScript. Before learning data types in JavaScript, there is one concept you should know about: dynamic typing. Now, if you don't know, there are two types of programming languages: dynamically typed programming languages or loosely typed programming languages, and the another group is statically typed programming languages known as strongly typed programming languages. The example of strongly typed programming languages are C++, C, Java, etc. And the examples of dynamically typed programming languages are JavaScript, Python. Now what does dynamic typing means? In programming languages such as C, C++ and Java, when we declare variables, we also associate a type of those variables. For example, when we want to have a variable which will store a number, we declare that variable as an integer with the keyword of int. Similarly, if we want to declare a variable which will store strings, then we declare it with the string keyword. That means on declaration we associate types to those variables, and these variables can only hold values of these and these types only. That is, say for example, if I declared a variable as an integer, then that variable cannot hold a string. That variable will always be only able to hold integral values. In JavaScript and Python, these concepts doesn't hold. In JavaScript, dynamic typing comes into play. This means that a programmer doesn't have to specify the types of variables that he declares. The JavaScript engine at runtime infers the type of the variables on the basis of the values stored in them. For example, in the previous examples that we took, for example, the name variable, then in the name variable we gave a value which was inside of quotes, and we declared the name variable using the plain old var keyword. So how will JavaScript come to know what was the type? And how will the programmer indicate the JavaScript engine that the type was a string? The answer is that the programmer won't. The programmer will just give the value that he wants to give to a variable, and the JavaScript engine understands it. So when we give a string value, when we give the value of Imran inside of quotes to the name variable, the JavaScript engine automatically inferred that it was a string. Similarly, if we type a number, then the JavaScript engine infers that it was a number. And also, we can hold any type of value in a variable at any point of time in a program. Say, at a later stage, if inside of Imran I assign numerical value, then it's totally valid in JavaScript. This is the concept of dynamic typing at its bare basics. So it was crucial for you to have the knowledge of this concept if you want to work with JavaScript. And now that you have an understanding of it, let's move on and explore the data types available in JavaScript. Okay, so before that, we'll see an example of dynamic typing. Here we have a variable var foo, which has a value of a number 007. Now see here, foo is a number. At a later stage, we can reassign foo to another value which may be of another type. In this case, we have assigned a string which has a value of bar. So foo is now a string. Lastly, we have assigned a Boolean value of false inside of foo. So foo is now a Boolean. Now this is the concept of dynamic typing. Now let's move on. The ECMAScript standard defined that there are 6 primitive data types in JavaScript, and those are namely Boolean, number, string, null, undefined, and symbol. There is another non-primitive data type, the object. Now we are going to see each of these types in detail. A Boolean represents 2 values, true and false. Boolean variables are used in scenarios when we need to examine whether something is true or false. For example, say we have an e-commerce application. Inside of that, we give each product a Boolean variable, say in cart. Now in cart is a Boolean variable which can be either true or false. And if in cart is true, this means that the item is in the cart. If it's false, it means that the item isn't in the cart. So we can use Boolean variables to check whether certain condition is true or false, and accordingly take some action in our application or program. It's like an on and off switch. It can have only 2 states. The manner in which we make a Boolean variable in JavaScript is similarly to making any other variable in JavaScript. That is with the var keyword, var, and then giving the name of the variable, then giving the equal to symbol, and then assigning the value which can be either true or false. Now one thing to note here is that true or false are without any quotes. Now as a beginner, you might give true and false inside of quotes, double quotes or single quotes. Now this is a common pitfall for newcomers. Always remember that JavaScript is a dynamically typed language, and this is why I introduced the concept before introducing data types in JavaScript. This is because if you take the same variables that you took earlier and assign the value of true or false but inside of quotes, then those true or false will not be assigned as booleans but as strings. So the variables that you intended to be booleans ended up being strings. So this will break your entire program, as you'll try to do some things that will be intended for Boolean variables, but things will result in an error because those Boolean variables will be strings. So with that in mind, let's move forward. The second data type we are going to focus on is number. Now numbers are the basic thing that we ever need in a program, because the history of computing relates back to calculating with numbers. It's inherent that all programming languages have specifications and methods to deal with numbers. Now in JavaScript, there is only one data type for all kinds of numbers, which is number. Kind of number, whether a fraction or a whole number, is treated as a number. Whereas in other strongly typed languages, there are a lot of different types of numbers defined, and all of them have different types of data types. For example, in C and C++, the numbers which don't have any fractional part are defined with the data type of int, which says that they are an integer, and floating point variables have the data type of float, and high precision floating point numbers have the data type of double. In JavaScript, all numbers have the data type of number. Now when I say that they have the data type of number, it doesn't mean that we are specifying a type for them. It is just that the JavaScript engine will infer the type as a number. In JavaScript, a number can be written without a decimal point or with a decimal point. A number can also be plus infinity or minus infinity. Now it may seem crazy to you, but in JavaScript, a number can also be not a number. Yes, not a number, that is NaN, is also a valid value that a number can have in JavaScript. Not a number is a value which represents some computational error. For example, if you divide a string with some number, then that is a computational error, because you can only divide a number by a number. And so if you ever see a variable having a value of not a number, then it means that you did some error in the computation of some mathematical expression. Now this is an example, as I said, when you try to divide something that is not a number, say a string, with a number, say 2, then it results in not a number value. I'm in the console of my browser, and I'm gonna show you all the things that we just learned about the number and Boolean data type. So first, let's declare a variable bool1 and give it a value of true. Let's also declare another variable bool2 and give it a value which will not be a Boolean value but a string. Now let's check the type of both these variables. We can do this using the type of keyword. Type of bool1, press enter, and see it gives us the type of the variable bool1, and which is Boolean. Now let's investigate the type of variable bool2 and see. It says that the type of the variable bool2 is string. So never give Boolean values inside of quotes. Now enough of Booleans, let me clear my console. Now let's talk about numbers. Let's declare a variable, say age, and give it a value of say 18. Let's check the type of this number. And it says that it's a number. Now let's change the value of age to a fraction. Now obviously age cannot be a fraction, but still let's say that it is. And again check the type of age. It says a number. So any type of number is a number. Now age can have any value. That means it can have a value of plus infinity. And when we again check the type, it says that it's a number. It can also have the value of negative infinity, and it again has the type of number. Now age can also be some, let's say divide a string by a number, any random string, divide by a number, and age now has a value of none, and let's check its type. It's again a number, as you guessed. Having gained experience with the number type, let's move on to the string data type. Now string is a very important data type, as it is also the data type with which we deal with all the data that is present in our web applications and websites. If you really want to become a web developer, then you must master this data type. Strings, as I said earlier, are used for storing text. either with single quotes or with double quotes. And one important thing to keep in mind is that in JavaScript, strings are immutable. That means that they cannot be changed. Now, as I said, string is a very important data type. We'll dedicate an entire lesson or a number of lessons later in this series. Now let's see the null type. Now null stands for no value or nothing. So if you want to define a variable which has no value, you specify this with the help of the null value. When you give a null value to a variable, it means that it has the type of null. And you do this by simply var nothing equals null. Another data type in JavaScript is undefined. Undefined means that you haven't initialized or given any value to a variable. For example, here we have declared a variable var test var but haven't given it any value. Then when we console.log it in the browser, it will give us the value undefined. This is because the type of the value inside of test var is unknown because the value itself is unknown. Another data type which is rarely used is symbol. Symbols were introduced by the ES6 standard. Symbols are, like strings, immutable and have unique values. Symbols will be used by anyone in use cases when they want to make something private. For example, in other programming languages like C++, if I declare a class, then I can make some fields of it private using the private identifier. But in JavaScript, there is no public, private, protected identifiers. So if you want to make some field of an object private, then you do that by making it as a symbol. The syntax for declaring a symbol is const mySymbol equals to, then give the symbol function, or you can say that it's a constructor call symbol, and inside of the parenthesis we pass the value which will be stored inside of mySymbol. In this case we have passed a string of mySymbol inside of single quotes. So now mySymbol will be unique and it will be private. Symbol is rarely used, will not further dig into this data type. So now we have seen all the primitive data types in JavaScript, and I bet that you have gained real understanding of them. Now let's expand our JavaScript knowledge by exploring a non-primitive data type, the object. Objects in JavaScript don't have a single value but a collection of values which are known as properties. These properties are stored as key value pairs inside of an object. Properties can be of any data type. It can be any of the 6 available primitive data types, or a property of an object can itself be an object. The manner in which you declare an object is using curly braces. So we have a var obj and we have assigned it to curly braces. Inside of curly braces we give any number of key and value pairs with the data type that we want to have. So in this case we have a key 1 which has a string value, we have another key 2 which has again a string value, key 3 has a boolean value of true, key 4 has a number 32, and key 5 is itself an object because it has empty curly braces. Now these keys are separated with the help of commas. You can access these values using the member access or dot operator. So say you want to access the value of key 3, so all you can do is just obj.key3 and it will return value which is stored inside of key3 property of the obj object, that is true. Now what I have presented is just an overview of how you can declare objects in JavaScript. I have done another lesson in which I have gone in deep explaining what an object is, how to declare objects, how to use objects, and also explored a number of methods of creating objects and also classes. So if you want to gain deep understanding of objects in JavaScript, I recommend going through that lesson. The link to that lesson is in the description. I hope that you learned a lot about data types and variables in JavaScript in this lesson, and Hope that you hang around for more lessons in this series, as we'll uncover a lot of concepts and explore a number of new and exciting things about JavaScript. If you like this video, then I request you to please like and subscribe the channel, and do read the description for more amazing stuff.